coming on to cybersecurity in pharma, right? While we understand security is important for every business, what do you think is the weightage for cybersecurity in the pharma industry, and what is the scale of it being one of the foundations of the business?
It's very important, Roshan, because I'm sure that tomorrow when you want to consume a drug, you want to be sure that you're taking the right drug. There has been no changes towards it. There has been no tampering towards it.
Right.
So when you look at it from that perspective, it becomes very important in terms of also satisfying in terms of where pharma comes out with something, their methodology of very basic, what we call as 21 CFR Part 11 or CSP, or what we call today as CSA, computer assure, in terms of CSA, in terms of assurance that we need to look at. Now, why cybersecurity becomes very important today in the pharma industry is where I was relating to you earlier also. In terms of the number of attacks that you have seen today on the pharma companies, because today probably when there is a lot of development towards new molecules, in terms of new drugs, when you are patenting them, right, that is where a lot of money in terms of R&D is being invested by pharma companies, where they want to very closely hold to guard, because for pharma it is first to market, which gives you the advantage in terms of you have your patents and then you're having blockbuster drugs coming out. So it becomes very essential for pharma to further look at cybersecurity across the entire length and breadth of pharma. So starting from R&D to manufacturing to supply chain to sales and marketing. But probably let me not hold it only to pharma, but let me extend this to healthcare and life sciences.
Right.
Let's assume a situation where today you're looking at wearables. And when you talk about wearables, right, probably if you could talk about monitoring devices that could look at your glucose readings. And then it is probably going to give you what is your insulin level that needs to be taken based on your glucose levels. Let's assume that there is a flaw in the application, the mobile application that a patient has downloaded. What could probably happen is that a person could probably change the algorithm behind the insulin content that probably should be administered, which could probably lead to consequences that are undesirable. So this could be one of those, and this is something that has happened in the past. And we have been observing that how even mobile apps that are being, a lot of patient-centric apps that are being pushed out by pharmaceutical companies, so where they need to further protect and ensure cybersecurity, not just of their organizations, but also of applications that are being designed, developed, and for healthcare and life sciences for the end patients, becomes very, very, very imperative at this point of time.
True. I think it's a very critical aspect of the whole scheme of things here.
Even in automobile industry, if I was probably to say, today everything runs on a chip. Let's assume that and it just recently happened with Volvo too. Pardon me for raising the name, but then what's happening is we have seen instances where a lot of automobile companies today are also being impacted. Let's say for a thought process, if a person is able to probably control your brakes on the system. Earlier it just used to be mechanical in terms of your car, but today cars, your braking, everything is happening at the end of the day through a little computer in terms of a chip. And if I'm able to actually break in through them, it means that I can even stop your braking at a critical point of time.
True.
So today what's happening in the pharmaceutical industry, if we look at, we also talk about the OT network sometime back when we are talking about it, where we talk about PLCs, HPLC, and the SCADA systems. These are systems that are primarily not updated for ages by a lot of pharmaceutical companies. And this is where there's a lot of impact that happens.
Right. True. That's huge. Now, talking about the challenges in computing for the R&D departments of organizations. How much of a challenge is it? I mean, I do understand the complexity; it's huge. But can you shed a little more light on that bit?
Well, in terms of R&D, which is primarily a lot of money in pharmaceutical organizations go into two areas. One is in terms of R&D, and two in terms of the marketing, is where primarily these two things happen. In terms of R&D, again, there has always been challenges in terms, because when you're looking at the data, when you're looking at data, the volume of data, and the speed at which we need to work with these data sets, and it becomes a real challenge. So probably. Quantum computing could probably be an answer very soon in terms of being a game changer, especially for pharma R&D. But then quantum computing is still evolving as we speak, and very few companies like AWS who probably have started looking at and trying to solve for quantum computing. So I believe that that would be a game changer, especially for the pharmaceutical industry with quantum computing.
So the next development is quantum computing in the very near future. Interesting. What kind of revolutionizing technologies are in play as we speak in the pharma industry?
So I will again extend this a little more to pharma, life sciences, healthcare. Today, when we are talking about technologies, there are very, I would be probably rattling out or juggling a lot of names like AI, VR, and then we could talk about machine learning. I could talk about 3D printing, but then it also comes with a lot of very interesting use cases, business cases. What are we trying to solve? Probably when you're looking at virtual reality, augmented reality, right? Again, it is about how do you bring your real world and your virtual world together. It is about masking these two worlds together. Probably it could be in terms of, let's assume that there is going to be some sort of therapy areas which are very difficult for patients to undergo. Not naming the pharmaceutical organization, but then to treat burnt victims, when they undergo the severity of the burn, it is extremely high. So even to treat them, it is becoming a challenge, because the doctors are not able to administer medication to them. But with the use of virtual reality, what happens is it is an immersive experience.
Right.
So as the patient gets immersed, what happened is that they were exploring options of showcasing them the snow-capped mountains or the Arctic or the Arctic poles. So it gets immersified in the mind that they're on a different realm altogether, and this probably reduced the level at which they could probably feel the burn, and it helped the doctors probably to administer the medication to them for the burnt victims. So this is probably one of those ways that you could probably look at virtual reality changing patient experiences. The same thing could also happen on your shop floor. For instance, instead of training people directly on your equipment, you could also use virtual reality, or you could also use mixed reality. Or that is the next thing, where we talk about extended reality. Or you could also look at holography in terms of how do you train people to use equipment so that they are actually safe before they actually start using the equipment and the machines on the shop floor, which means that you're also ensuring that you're looking at the safety of your employees, for which technology is probably becoming that game changer. You could also look at 3D printing, which could be another technology, especially when you're looking at, say, from a pharmaceutical industry perspective. I want to administer multiple drugs to a patient at different points and different intervals of time, because sometimes people forget to take medications. So can I administer a smart pill, and the smart pill would know at what point of time can this drug be pushed into the body. A person consumes it once and then it can get released. The release times would probably evolve. Also with 3D printing, what could happen is that I can look at multiple different molecules being compounded together into one single pill at a place where we may have manufacturing challenges. So today
Right.
the way that's going to evolve is, can I probably manufacture even at a pharmacy level? So it is still a conceptualized way. We will have to wait.
But then,
But they're very
just the
interesting
sound,
technology.
absolutely, just the sound of it sounds fascinating in the kind of solutions that you just came up with, that you mentioned. True. Uh, okay. Now, from a security perspective, what kind of threats do you think that these technologies that you spoke of right now, what kind of threats do they hold with them?
Well, I would say that with all technologies, like, as they are all evolving, they also have their own vulnerabilities that are there. And so, what would essentially happen, like, when we're talking about, say, AR and VR, for example, it is a very huge area. Again, you have products in them, like, various different solutions for AR and VR. It becomes very essential for you to always go back and check and see for the CVE, like, the common vulnerability exposure, the common vulnerability enumeration. If there are any known issues in a particular product, in a particular solution, before you even start looking at using them completely. So, as with any technology, that there are gaps, there are loopholes which needs to be pre-identified and pre-administered before you move forward. And that is one of those very important things that I do as part of my checklist, in terms of having a complete security protocol being defined on various levels of checks that I administer before even embarking on them.
True, true. Very nicely put. Well, thank you, Dr. Mukund, for sharing again your perspective on cybersecurity from the pharma sector for us.